Here's Polidice, an emerging YouTuber that thinks private charity doesn't work, government does. So, I'm gonna say how I feel about what he says on that.
One thing that I hope we can all agree on is that charity is good and important.
I agree. Charity is good and important. It is good to give voluntarily out of the goodness of your heart to people who are less fortunate. That's very good. It's important that people get what they need.
It's an individual act of graciousness for people less fortunate than you. But because we all agree that charity is good, some people will, of course, abuse it for political gain.
What do you mean by political gain? I mean, I understand some people donate to charity just to look good, but what do you mean by political gain? I don't get it.
Anytime that a progressive says that we should raise taxes to help the poor, some conservative libertarian will inevitably drop by just to say, if you want to help people, why don't you just give your own money?
Yeah, you should give your own money. I mean, you are giving to the poor, right? And not just taking other people's money by force and giving it to the poor, right? Also, taxes don't work, okay? Welfare's failing, taxes don't work. To help the poor, why don't you just donate out of your own pocket? I mean, come on.
Right off the bat, that's stupid because...
So, asserting that taxation is theft, and that if you want to help people, you should give money out of your own damn pocket rather than stealing that of others, is stupid? No, it's not. Give out of your own pocket. Don't just take for others to fund the family system. I mean, it's basic knowledge.
We do give to charity, yet somehow we still have problems because, one, most of the money we give to charity goes to specific non-political causes like cancer research, disaster relief, and aid to children and people with disabilities.
Those are just some of the charities that help people, and there's virtually a charity for every human need. That is not the problem.
And two, no individual has enough money to solve these problems.
If all the money government has was taken from people, and people themselves don't have the money to help the poor, how the hell can the government have enough money to help the poor? I mean, explain that one. Oh, and explain how private charities brought in over $10.2 trillion. Government welfare's cost over $19 trillion, and yet the private charity's been working and not the government's welfare.
Let's take the student debt crisis, for example. Bernie Sanders' free public college plan would cost $60 billion a year, which means that even if Jeff Bezos, the richest person in the world, donated 100% of his wealth to the cause, it would clean him out in less than 2 years.
Yeah, government plans are expensive as fuck, and let's not forget there are other people too that donate to charity.
So for someone to say that if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a former bartender, wants free tuition, then she should just pay for it herself is ridiculous.
So it's ridiculous to expect someone to pay for their own things themselves or get voluntary donations from charity, but it's not ridiculous to forcibly take that money from others and to give it to them? Oh my god, if I drank, then I'd be drinking throughout this whole video, and I'd die of alcohol poisoning. Yeah.
And it doesn't even cover stuff like universal health care and public infrastructure, things that every other developed country has no trouble with.
Really? No other developed country has problems with universal health care. Well then, explain this. Explain this.
I'm going to break this into two parts. Part one is for conservatives who disingenuously use this argument to derail conversation, and part two is for libertarians who sincerely believe that the social safety net should be replaced by systemic charity. Dear conservatives, if you want to spend hundreds of billions, sometimes trillions of dollars on the military, border security, mass incarceration, police militarization, then why don't you just pay for it yourself instead of making other people pay for it? Insincerely, Polidice.
Well, you see, here's the thing, Polidice. An organization that forcibly takes money away from people can spend it on whatever the hell it wants. Now, while I agree it shouldn't spend your money on that stupid shit, I also agree that it shouldn't spend your money at all, since it's stolen. And why do you trust the same organization that wastes your money on this shit to spend it on good shit? I mean, sure, correct me if I'm wrong, you want all the conservatives out of government, and all the liberals kept in, but what makes you think the liberals will do? What makes you think the liberals will do any better? I mean, they're still part of the violent monopoly on force called government, which can spend your money once again on whatever the hell it wants. And welfare has been shown not to work. So why expect the government to do better with your money when it's proven in the past it hasn't? And why expect it to do better with your money than yourself when donating to the poor? I don't get it. I mean, government doesn't help the poor, just waste money on failed systems. If you want people to help the poor, you should have them do it rather than about monopoly on force and arbitration called government.
Conservatives don't actually believe in systemic charity. They only use it when it's convenient for them.
What? Are you serious? That's what the left does.
For conservatives, the systemic charity argument serves two purposes. One, it's a character attack, implying that people who care about healthcare, education, infrastructure, and homelessness could solve the problems themselves, but they're too selfish and would rather just force other people to pay for it, as if the progressives would somehow evade the taxes. This all serves to project their selfishness onto their opposition.
Once again, more projecting, and in addition to that, some straw man.
Two, it attempts to derail the conversation by proposing a counter-solution that they know perfectly well isn't going to work.
So, it doesn't work, yet all these people are volunteering and giving their money away? It doesn't work? I guess it doesn't really mean anything to you then.
But there's some people who do believe that it'll work, which brings me to the libertarians who genuinely believe that things would be better or at least more moral if we replaced our social safety net with private charity.
How many people in here, and I actually do want a show of hands, love grandmas? How many of you would donate money to feed grandmas? I do not see a single person that did not raise their hand. That's how you fund Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare.
There are four central problems with this. One, charity organizations aren't always very effective. Of course, there are lots of charities that do lots of good, critical work, but having private organizations, especially if you don't intend to have them well regulated, leads to inefficiency, waste, scams, and lots of money that doesn't make it to the intended destination because there are too many different actors at play and mismanagement will inevitably happen without the kinds of bureaucratic structure that a well-organized government has.
It's funny how you complain about this charity barely donating money to a cause, yet barely any money in welfare goes to actual welfare recipients. Over 75% goes to just running the system, the people who are employed within the system.
And that's not some random sketchy charity, that's Red Cross. Counter-argument. We could still have these government organizations doing the work, but the money will be raised voluntarily, which I'll get to later. 2. When times are bad, more people will need money, while fewer people will be able and willing to give. If the economy crashes, then the number of people who lose their jobs and need help will skyrocket, and the number of people who giving to charities will plummet, because people will save any money they have for themselves and their families. There's a reason the New Deal happened during the Great Depression, not the Roaring '20s.
Countries that have more capital have been shown to give more to charity. Plus, the New Deal sucked ass. It worsened the Great Depression, not to mention was a form of tyranny.
3. Replacing taxes with charity is unfair, as it shifts the burden on the people most willing to give instead of people most able to pay. Again, I'm pro-charity in the same way that I'm pro-tipping.
How the heck does this reward selfishness? I've just shown that richer countries are, they give more, and that, various charities have disappeared because of welfare and government intervention. And the people who are most willing to give should give, and nobody should be forced to give even if they have the money. So at this point, it just doesn't make any sense. Also, charity works better than government, as I explained over and over again. Also, you say you're pro-charity as you are pro-tipping, yet you've spoken out against private charity working so many times. Are you either of them?
Let's get one thing straight. If you live in America, you have to tip.
Brace yourself, folks. It's another Adam Ruins Everything clip. You know what? I think I'll debunk that in another video, so just enjoy the bullshit.
Servers here rely on tipping to make a living, and as long as that's true, if you don't do it, you're an asshole.
Sorry.
Thank you.
But just because that's the system we have, doesn't mean it's a good system.
Why don't they just pay you a normal amount of money and make the food more expensive? I mean, that's what every business has done since the dawn of time. When you buy a pair of jeans, they're just 50 bucks. They're not like, that'll be $40 and you decide if the stock boy eats tonight. Ooh, sorry. What an asshole, huh? It's her fault, not mine.
And tipping is a very generous analogy because, 1, there's an immediate social pressure to do so, 2, the financial contribution is very small, and 3, it's much harder to rationalize not paying a tip than it is to rationalize not paying taxes.
How the hell are the two comparable? Tipping is voluntary, taxation is not. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. And if you resist enough, you get shot dead. If you don't pay tips, maybe the most you get is a frown or something. But you won't go to jail or get shot for not paying a tip. And it's not like the restaurant will refuse to let you leave for not paying tips. And I'd say taxation is, way more important to argue against than tipping, since it's involuntary and tipping is not. Tipping is voluntary after all, so focus on taxation.
And yet, even despite this, tipped workers make significantly less and are much more likely to be impoverished than non-tipped workers. These are things that are good individually, but systematically shouldn't exist. Systemic charity is a system that rewards people for being selfish.
Whoa, what is up with this? Systematic charity rewards being selfish? You're freaking giving to people. How is that selfishly being rewarded? And if we're talking about charity here, why are you blabbing on about tipping?
For there's no way this could work. The idea that if we cut taxes, then people will have more money for themselves, then they'll give more to charity, this could either be because people think that private charity works better than the government, already debunked, and does anybody actually think that people are going to put all of that money back into charity?
That's not the argument, though. The argument is if people don't have to pay taxes, they have more money to at least potentially give to charity. And they also have more money for other things as well. So why not cut the damn taxes and let people spend their money how they want to spend their own damn money? And also, private charity has shown to work better than government welfare, and people used to give more.
No, of course not. Even assuming that 50% of the money will make it back voluntarily is absurd. Even the most virtuous people are going to save or spend a large chunk of that.
Gee, it's almost as if it's their money and they get to spend it however they want to, even if it means not using it to help other people. Gee, that just seems so wrong.
The idea is just contrary to human nature, as communism is, if not more so.
So, you're against free market charity, and yet you're against communism, and say it's against human nature to give, despite me showing the contrary. Well, which one do you want? I mean, you can only have one. You can either have free market capitalism with its charity and all, or you could have communism/socialism with its lack of voluntary transactions and shit. I mean, all I can say is I want a voluntary system. I don't want to be forced to give to others. I want to do that out of the good of my own heart if I choose to do so. And even if I'm forced to do so, it was done at gunpoint, so it's not real altruism. It's not real charity. Charity, voluntary out of the good of your heart, state coercion. I just did it so I didn't get my brains blown out.
The idea that voluntary charity can provide an adequate and consistent source of revenue that would cover not just the basic functions of government, but also healthcare and education for all, quality public infrastructure, aid to the poor, elderly, unemployed, disabled, and homeless is nonsense, which is why we have these problems in the first place.
Every problem you mentioned is due to government, not people voluntarily giving out of their hearts. Fucking government.
And why they've never been solved without a collective action by the members of society. Libertarians support this because they cling to the idea that individualism is good in and of itself, both a means and an end, a rejection of social responsibility.
Let me fix that for you. Done. Okay, now let me show you the actual racists and sociopaths that have resulted because of statism. Take a look at these fun guys. Libertarianism is where the sociopaths and racists come from, not statism, it's libertarianism.
But we do live in a society.
Yeah, we do live in a society, but guess what that society is made up of? Individuals. Individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, dreams, goals, desires, and rights. And only those individuals truly have rights. The society is just a group of them. A society can't have rights of its own. Only the individuals in the society can have rights. You can't just act like, we need to submit to the collective, because we don't. That isn't true. And you can't just act like, one day you can go, there's this individual I want to violate, a group of individuals I want to violate, but I can't do it on my own. Maybe I can do it in a group. In fact, maybe I can even convince all these individuals that I have the right to violate them because I'm in a group. That my group has a right to take their stuff just because it's a bigger group. Maybe I can convince them of that. That's basically what this argument boils down to, is a bigger group taking down a smaller group, or even just one guy. I mean, that's all it is justified victimization to someone. That's all the greater good argument is. That's all the societal versus individual argument is. That's all collectivism is. It's allegedly justified victimization to someone. You aren't really helping anyone. And how can you say society has, rights over the individual? Give an example. Like, how can this society violate the rights of an individual? How can it do it? What example is it, I mean, I can give examples of things society can't violate because of individualism, because of individual rights, because of rights. They can't take away your right to own a gun. They can't make you go to school. They can't make you have a certain belief. They can't censor your speech. They can't take your money. I mean, I can't think of one right society possibly has to violate your freedom. I can't. But I was thinking, since you support this kind of system, I was thinking you can. So I'm hoping in some video you make, you give an example of a way society can violate the rights of the individual. I'm hoping you can make a video of that. Because I honestly don't think it can happen, that society has this right to violate individuals because they need something that the individual has that they're just not willing to give up. So they gotta go in a group and claim they have rights that individual doesn't have. That's just weak to me.
And it's our job to make sure that it's a functional and humane society. We can't allow ourselves to be distracted by unproven solutions that are not going to work very well.
Gee, like government, as I keep explaining?
We need to keep pushing for proven solutions that work exceptionally well in other developed countries.
You mean these proven solutions, which I already showed earlier in the video?
Real solutions for real problems that affect real people.
And the government has only shown time and time again not to care about these people or the problems they suffer under, so could we just stop using it by now? So yeah, private charity will always work better than government welfare, subsidies and all that or whatever. Anyways, like, fave, share, subscribe, comment, yeah, that.